Come on, guys.
About an hour and a half then, where ourselves properly will get underway with those open.
How you doing, Attorney Chuck? No justice. No peace.
Short behind me here, you will see Roy family, approximately an hour
Attorney Chuck.
Good morning. I'm Attorney Ben Crump, and along with Attorney Tony Romanucci, Attorney Chris Stewart, Attorney Justin Miller, and Attorney Jeff Storms, who hails here from Minneapolis, Minnesota, we have the honor of representing the family of George Perry Floyd Jr. Present here with us is my mentor and our civil rights leader, Reverend Al Sharpton, who's standing with the family of George Floyd assembled here today, and there are others who are flying in this morning for what they know will be a long 4-week justice to justice, a 4-week journey to justice. We have his cousins, Sharita Tate, Tidra McGee, Tara Brown. We have his nephew, Brandon Williams. We have his brothers, Rodney Floyd and Philonise Floyd. His sister, Bridget Floyd, is en route, and we know Justin, his daughter Gianna, is also here in Minneapolis today. Today starts a landmark trial that will be a referendum on how far America has come in its quest for equality and justice for all. It will be prima facie evidence, this trial of Derek Chauvin regarding the killing of George Floyd on May 25th, 2020, right here in Minneapolis. It will be prima facie evidence whether America is going to live up to the Declaration of Independence. Now, I know everybody can quote the Declaration of Independence, but this trial is going to provide evidence of whether we really believe it when we say we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equally, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that amongst them are life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. Well, America, that means black people too. America, that means George Floyd too. And for all of those people, Reverend Al, who continue to say that this is such a difficult trial, that this is such a hard trial, well, we rebuke that.
Listen.
Because we know if George Floyd was a white American citizen and he suffered this painful, torturous death with a police officer knee on his neck, nobody will be saying this is a hard case.
Right.
And when people ask you that, activists, and the family thanks the activists, when people ask you, well, isn't this a tough case? Because they're going to try to say George Floyd had a trace amount of drugs in his system. You let them know that Ben Crump said that George Floyd was living, breathing, walking, and talking just fine.
Yeah.
Until the police put him face down and put him in handcuffs and put a knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. So this murder case is not hard when you watch that torture video of George Floyd. Y'all understand?
Yeah.
This murder case is not hard when you watch that torture video of George Floyd. And we have to call it what it is. It was torture. Even under the Geneva Convention definition, this was torture. And Derek Chauvin should be held criminally liable for the death of George Floyd. You know, we, the civil lawyers, made sure that George Floyd family got their civil justice under the 7th Amendment, Tony, with the historic $27 million settlement that not only included compensation for the family, but also policy reform. And that is important, but that's only part of the justice. George Floyd, just like any other citizen, his family is deserving of whole justice, full justice. That means that the state and the agents of the government shall hold individuals who commit crimes accountable under the 10th Amendment. And black people in America should not only have to get partial justice. We have every right to get whole justice.
Whole justice.
Civil justice and criminal justice. Nobody questioned when the Diamond family got a $20 million settlement.
Listen.
That white family should not also get criminal justice. So why is it that we will question in 2021 whether black people in America can get whole justice as well under the 7th Amendment and the 10th Amendment? We're not asking for anything extraordinary. We're asking for equal justice under the law. And newsflash, breaking news. We expect in just a few minutes you're going to hear opening arguments, and they're going to take the playbook out, Reverend Allen. They're going to try to assassinate the character of George Floyd. For Lotus, they're going to call your brother everything but a child of God. And they're going to talk about as much as they can about his record. But his record isn't an issue.
All right.
Because this is the trial of Derek Chauvin.
Come on.
Breaking news. This is the trial of Derek Chauvin. Let's talk about his record.
All right.
His 19 complaints of excessive force by citizens here in Minneapolis. That's what we should be talking about. George Floyd didn't kill anybody. Derek Chauvin was the person that killed George Floyd. So why is it we will allow them to assassinate the character of George Floyd after they assassinated his person. Y'all, they taught me in law school that if you have the facts on your side, then by all means, argue the facts. But then they said, if the facts ain't really with you, then try to assassinate your opponent's character as a way to hopefully distract everybody from focusing in on the facts. Well, everybody, please do not be distracted. The facts are simple. What killed George Floyd was an overdose of excessive force.
Come on, bro.
The transcript from the autopsies are clear. The manner and cause of death was asphyxiation by homicide. Philonise said in the hood, they choked. It was a knee choke. And so let's remember the facts here. This murder case is not hard. Just look at the torture video of George Floyd. When anybody asks you, remind them, this murder case is not hard. Just look at the torture video of George Floyd, the most viewed murder of a police on a citizen in the history of the world. It has been viewed just in over 50 million times on YouTube and probably as many more times on cable television. Everybody has saw this video. What we want to know is, will we see justice? The whole world is watching. The whole world is watching. So you're going to hear from Attorney Tony Romanucci, Attorney Justin Miller, and Attorney Jeff Storms. And then you're going to hear from the family of George Floyd. And then after that, you're going to hear from our civil rights leader, America's civil rights leader, Al Sharpton. We're trying to time it where we can get it right at 8:46. And we're going to try to keep time. And then Reverend Al, after he gives us our call to action, we're going to take a knee for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And hopefully everybody within the sound of his voice will join us in taking that knee to understand what George Floyd went through the last minutes and seconds of his life. Without further ado, Attorney Tony Romanucci, a great, great lawyer from Chicago, Illinois. My brother in this struggle.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Antonio Romanucci. Yesterday I said we were on day 306 of George Floyd being killed. Today is day 307, but it's the first day of justice for the criminal case. As my brother Ben Crump said, this is a case of common sense. This is not a case about George Floyd's character. This is not a case about George Floyd's past. This is the case about what happened on May 25th of 2020. And I will tell you this. Remember, mechanical asphyxiation by homicide. And that was determined by the two independent medical examiners that we brought to this town to examine George days after he was killed. And why we did that? Because we had to challenge and attack the narrative that Hennepin County had put out that George had died of a fentanyl overdose. Immediately you could see that their message was for George Floyd when it should have been about Derek Chauvin. And we are here to be the messenger for the goodness of George Floyd and what Derek Chauvin did on George Floyd that day. We're here because civil justice. We're there towards civil justice. Today, criminal justice. But I will tell you that we have to message something even more important. We have to message change of laws. The Minnesota General Assembly will have an opportunity to change one of the most important laws that we've ever had in this state. and that's changing the arbitration reform bill. We want it named the George Floyd Reform Arbitration Bill. We want it so that if a chief of police fires a police officer because they lied, because they used unreasonable use of force, because they were egregious conduct, we want that termination by the chief of police to stand. We don't want it overturned by an arbitrator. We want the chief of police, just like Chief Arredondo did in this case. He fired those police officers because they failed to intervene, because they didn't try and save George's life when he said, "I can't breathe," just like we're all doing right now. We're breathing. We don't have to think about it. George was begging to breathe. That is deserving of termination. It's not deserving of an arbitrator to review that termination and overturn it. But we're here in George's spirit because every single day since his death, George has sent a message. And he's going to send a message in perpetuity. We're going to make sure that never ever needless death happens again, where an unrestrained, non-violent man, a black man, killed at the hands of white police officers never happens again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Attorney Ramanucci. And hailing from Atlanta, Georgia, a person who has been instrumental in helping us achieve that historic civil justice for the family of George Floyd, especially the child of George Floyd, my brother, Attorney Justin Miller, who is partners with Attorney Chris Stewart.
Good morning. My name is Attorney Justin Miller. On behalf of my law partner, Chris Stewart, who couldn't be here with you today, I bring you greetings. This today is not the trial of George Floyd. And I've heard people say that. This is the George Floyd trial. This is the George Floyd trial. George Floyd is not on trial. This is the trial of Derek Chauvin, and it should be printed and spoken about that way every single time we talk about it. This trial is about America being America for all Americans. Not just some of us, all Americans. And it can be that way, and it should be that way. We have to take time now to think about what we want for our children and for our families. This family behind me is suffering, and they've been suffering since the beginning of this thing, and they're going to suffer long after all of you have gone and all of us are gone. What we want to do and what this trial can do is to make sure that no other families have to suffer in this manner. George Floyd was murdered. He wasn't killed. He didn't die.
Right.
He was murdered.
Yep.
And when a man is murdered, there should be retribution. There's no real justice, in my opinion, for a person who was murdered. You can never get his life back. His daughter will never get a father back. His brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews will never have that person in their life. But what we can do is make sure that justice is served in the courtroom to Derek Chauvin, the person who for 8 minutes and 46 seconds tortured, murdered, and killed George Floyd in front of the world for everyone to see. You know, in the very beginning of this, I had to explain to my children why during the pandemic I was flying to Minnesota to talk about and to represent the family of George Floyd and to see their faces, to explain to them why America was different for them and why they were going to have to change and understand what was going on. 10 years old and 7 years old, it broke my heart to see their faces after I explained that. I don't think another family should have to explain that. Another father should have to explain that to their children. I think that this should be the last time. And in that courtroom behind us in Minneapolis, Minnesota, we can go a long way in making that a reality. In the words of a good friend of mine, Stephen Jackson, who was here in the very beginning of all of this, who pushed and kept this case in the limelight, he said, justice for George Floyd and love for all who have love for all. Love for all who have love for all. Today, we can get some measure of justice. Today is the beginning of a new era for Minneapolis, Minnesota, and for America, and also for the world as a whole. Keep your eyes on Minnesota. This is where change is going to start. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Miller. And as I get ready to bring Attorney Jeff Storm from Minneapolis, we are trying to be coordinated. We want Reverend Al speaking around 8:40 or so, and at 8:46, it's symbolic. It's a reason. Then we're going to try to have you all follow his instructions. Attorney Jeff Storm's one of the great Minnesota lawyers, along with Michelle Godot, who really helped us achieve the civil justice. Now we're turning to Attorney General Keith Ellison and his team of prosecutors to deliver criminal justice. And it's been such an honor to work with you, Jeff, in your native hometown.
Thank you, Ben. It's been an honor to work with you as well. For too long, too many of us have been deliberately indifferent, at least, to the atrocities that have befallen our black brothers and sisters. But today is a landmark moment behind us to show the world that no longer will we be deliberately indifferent to hate. Through love and power, through these leaders, through these families that have suffered, we will all work together to eradicate it in every manner possible. And that means both civil and criminal justice. And we are all playing a role in that, and we thank you all for that.
Now we're going to have his family. It's going to be emotional for them, and you can imagine they're about to have to sit, Sarah, through this court proceeding and hear them talk about the person who they all grew up with in CUNY Homes projects of Houston, Texas. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee reminds us that not only is George Floyd family in the limelight, but also the whole CUNY Home neighborhood. All of Black America is in the limelight as we deal with this landmark case. And his family, all of them have been so dignified and graceful in the face of this unimaginable, horrific tragedy. Can you imagine, just for a second, if that was your loved one who was down on that ground begging? I don't think many people can imagine that, especially our white brothers and sisters. They can't fathom that. But just try to imagine that if you can. Just try to imagine the person who you grew up with, the person who looked after you on that ground begging for a breath. And that's the last moments of his life on this earth. That's what they're dealing with. So we're going to call his brothers to come before you. Philonise Floyd, Terrence Floyd, Rodney Floyd, and Brandon Williams. And also his cousins are here, Tara Brown and Sharita Tate and Latidra McGee. So if the brothers, if you all will come forward, you all represent the legacy of your brother. You know, we hear from Houston, Texas. You know, our brother George Floyd represents embodies third ward Houston.
any ghetto around America. You know, we represent all of that. We are one. And we came to Minnesota to better himself. And he had a lot of great things going. Like he fell in love with the city. He fell in love with the people. And he was a trucking school. And you know, Minnesota offered so much to him. And so George Floyd came to this city to make a better way for himself. And unfortunately, Mr. Sharpton, y'all seen the video, 8 minutes and 46 seconds, we on our purpose next. Y'all, please, do not be entertained by the lie that they're going to throw out on them. Do not be entertained by the lie. The truth is, he was killed in the streets. He came to Lisa to make a better way for himself, and unfortunately, Mr. Sharpton did what he did to us was the streets. So please, y'all, keep that in mind. He was murdered in the streets. That's all I'm gonna leave it at.
It's cold out here, but the heat is on. But the state of Minneapolis, Minnesota, they will have to make the right decision. They can't sweep this under the rug. George Floyd, Philando Castile, they were all killed by officers that were sworn to protect us. Many others who I can't name, is so many throughout America. But one thing I can tell you, we will get justice. We will not allow Derek Chauvin, Tao, and his crew to be the judge, the prosecutor, and the executioner.
Right?
If we can't get justice for a black man here in America, we will get justice everywhere else in America. This is a starting point. This is not a finishing point. We will be around the world to get justice for all others, meaning in Brazil, London, Ghana, anywhere we have to go to, because the shade of your skin shouldn't be a death sentence. America is watching. Just like this press, many shows, Court TV, they would display everything. Just like when that man had his knee on my brother's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. It was a motion cinema picture everybody seen. You had to be blind if you didn't see it. A blind man heard a man being tortured to death. Thank y'all.
Now Brandon Williams, his nephew, who was like a son to him.
Every time we come to Minnesota, we've been here a few times since the recent day on May 25th. It's never easy. But I think I can speak for us all when I say that this trip was a lot easier. We came in for one thing and one thing only. We came to get justice, right? And nothing less. We came to get justice. When you think about May 25th and seeing my uncle lay on the ground, not resisting arrest, calling for his mother, with a knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, and never, ever did no one think to render aid, to say, hey, maybe this guy's telling the truth, he really can't breathe. So as being said, if this trial is hard, we got two justice systems in America. One for white America and one for black America. And we can't have that. So I think today is definitely the starting point. This change is long overdue in this country. This can go all the way back to Rodney King. As my uncle said, a blind man can see this.
Yes, sir.
A blind man can see that was murder.
Tell it.
Despite anything that they say about my uncle, that was murder.
Tell it.
So either they weren't trained and qualified to do their job, or they intended on taking his life. either way, we need justice.
Yes, sir.
And I think throughout this whole trial, that's one word that you'll hear me and my family say a lot. Justice. Somebody needs to be held accountable.
Yes, sir.
You mean to tell me if he didn't encounter Derek Chauvin that day, that he would have still died?
No. Tell it.
Anybody out here standing here today believe that it's still a problem in America?
Yes, sir.
A problem that needs to be addressed and addressed today. You know, we can't get George Floyd back. But what we can do is make sure that no family feels this pain and suffering that we feel. His daughter won't have a father in her life. His brothers won't have a big brother to love and protect in the way that he did. Somebody needs to be held accountable.
Yes, sir.
And we're gonna demand that. Thank y'all.
And the last brother you will hear from hails from New York. That's Terrence Floyd.
Peace, everybody. Peace. Like my brother, like my family said, this is a very trying and hard time for us. You know, but thank you everyone for your prayers, your love, your support. It really strengthened us. And this is it's different because all the cases we saw before, I can name two. Like I said, I'm from New York, so I named Sean Bell. I actually lived around the corner from where he got shot. And I was actually sleeping, I heard the gunshots. And when I woke up in the morning, everybody was saying what had happened around the corner. You know, and I had friends. I had friends that went to school with Sean Bell. You know, so to see that, no justice in that situation, it made me furious. Then you came to New York. You came with Eric Garner, and we watched that. Even more furious, but it hit different right now because we on the other side of the fence. You know, that was my brother, and it just feels very different to just sit there and watch the video. And I've watched it numerous times, and some people say, why are you doing that to yourself? Why are you doing that to yourself? Because just like a person has a voicemail, and they lose a loved one, but they call that voicemail just to hear their voice, I was watching the video, not to discuss myself or get myself furious. That was the last time I could hear his voice. You know, so I watched it. Every time I watched it, it seemed like it just got me, it made me strong because I knew, yeah, they murdered him, but we still Floyd strong, and we still here. So we're gonna hold it down for him. You know what I'm saying? And they say trust the system. They want us to trust the system. Well, this is your chance to show us that we can trust you. Thank you.
Thank you, Terrence. And to all his family, his sister Bridget, and his daughter Gianna, and everybody, his sister Latanya, his sister Jaja, and the whole Floyd family. Thank you all for being dignified and graceful in your fight for justice. You know, America, this is the opportunity. This is the opportunity. Last night, our national civil rights leader, a person who's been with the family since the beginning, Reverend Al Sharpton, the National Action Network, had a prayer vigil, Justin Miller, because they understood that we needed to pray for this family. But also, we needed to pray for America. Because this is a seminal moment, a landmark moment in American history. And so we need to pray that America can live up to its high ideals. We need to pray that America can continue to be the beacon of hope and justice for all the world to marvel. Because the whole world is watching. In America, we so desperately want to believe that marginalized people of color will get the same constitutional rights as all other American citizens enjoy. But historically, we have not seen that America. That has not been our reality. So George Floyd galvanized cities all across America and all across the world when that video of torture was viewed millions and millions of times. So America, this is the moment. This is the moment to show the rest of the world that you are the standard bearer when it comes to liberty and justice for all. The whole world is watching. The whole world is watching. The whole world is watching. And so it's befitting and appropriate that we will have our civil rights leader today for America, my mentor, one of our co-counselors, even though he's not a lawyer, the man who answers the bell all the way from Sean Bell and Rodney King, Attorney Ramanucci, all the way up to Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Jacob Blake Jr., Anthony McClain, Andre Hill. I mean, I'm just talking about black people who were killed by police in 2020. I ain't talking about Trayvon and Mike Brown and, you know, Sandra Bland and Alton Sterling. I'm just, even here in 2020, think about how many hashtags were created during the COVID-19 pandemic when everything was shut down in America, seems like, Rachel, except implicit bias and police brutality. So that's why we need his moral leadership now more than ever. The Reverend Al Sharpton.
Thank you, Attorney Crump. Let me say that last May, when this nation and world witnessed a lynching by knee of George Floyd, we are here to see the case of a man that used his knee to lynch a man and then blamed the man for the lynching. First of all, what was George Floyd being even approached for by police that would warrant you using the force that you used? What was the reason that he was apprehended in the way he was apprehended? And why is the attempt being made by the defense to talk about what was the stimulants that may have been in George Floyd? What would be the stimulant that would make a man hold his knee on a man's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds? I have asked people around the world to join us today at 8:46 in a few minutes. The family and attorneys and I are going to take a knee for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. When I did the eulogy here in Minneapolis of George Floyd, and we had people stand that long, people tweeted all over the world, after 3 minutes they were tired. What kind of venom, what kind of hatred do you have that would make you keep pressing down that long while a man is begging for his life, while a man is asking for his mother, At what point does your humanity kick in? At what point does the letter of the law kick in? At what point do you say, wait a minute, the guidelines kick in? This was not 8 seconds. This was not a flash of anger. It became intentional and deliberate. And justice must be intentional and deliberate in this courthouse.
Yes, sir.
So just like we came last year to be with this family, we told them we'd be here to the end, and we will be in and out until the end, and we wanted to end for justice. But make no mistake about it, Chauvin is in the courtroom, but America's on trial. America's on trial to see if we have gotten to the place where we can hold police accountable if they break the law. The law is for everybody. Policemen are not above the law. Policemen are subject to the law. And that's what's going on in this courtroom. And that's why we're here. The other thing that we are dealing with is that there is a law that has already passed the House of Representatives called the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. It is now headed into the Senate. We are asking the Senate to pass that law so that the federal law can be there to prevent George Floyd from happening again. We stand with this family in the shadows of this courthouse to say there's a jury in here and there's a jury in the U.S. Senate. And the U.S. Senate needs to make federal law in the name of George Floyd that would deal with all of this, that would supersede these state laws that give escape routes to policemen. I was in the room in Houston, Texas, where then candidate Joe Biden met with this family and promised that if he became president, he would fight for justice. He has supported this bill. Mr. President, Madam Vice President, Majority Leader Schumer, they're going in this courtroom having faith in a system that has been broken for Eric Garner, whose mother's here. That's been broken for Perdue, whose family's here. That's been broken for others. We will stand up with dignity with this family. We need the Senate to stand up for dignity with the people in this country. Make no mistake about it. There were videos before.
Yes, sir.
And you didn't give us justice.
Tell it, brother.
There was a video with Rodney King.
Yeah, it was.
And they went to straight court and let those police become acquitted. There's a video with Eric Garner. Never got to court. You have the opportunity to make it right this time and make it right for the country. You will never be able to bring this family's brother back. You will never fill that hole. But you can, in his name, stop this from continuing to happen over and over again. And let me say to all of those that have marched down through the last several months, many with us, many on their own, white, black, old, young, doesn't matter. The intergenerational, interracial communities that have marched is the reason we're in this courtroom. It was the reason that there is even a shot at justice. And we thank them for marching. Are we at 8:46? 30 seconds. So we've got 30 seconds. Let us prepare to take a knee. And we're taking a knee for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And we want you to think of during that time why Chauvin didn't in that time get his knee up.
Down in front. Down in front.
Everybody down in front.
Move down.
Get it down.
Down in the front.
Photo down.
Down in the front.
Hey, down! Hey, get down!
Relax, man. Shut up, man.
Down.
Still photographer.
Hey.
The butt is in the trap, right? I'm down.
This one?
Yeah. Still down.
Down, guy.
One, two shots and move. Butt is in the trap, press. Come on.
Still photographer standing up. Can you get out of the shot, please? How many pictures do you need? That's it, you. Could you sit down, sir?
1 minute.
Thank you. I know you're listening.
Down the front.
Down.
'Come on, Soto. Hey, Mike, get out of there.
2 minutes. 2 minutes. You're tired already. Think about this. You ain't even halfway there and you're ready to get up. Oh, yes, sir. Down in front.
Hey, down in front. Down in front. I'm gonna walk in.
That's it. That's why I got on the plane.
That's right.
Love you all, man.
Down in front.
You can't come and stand in front of that shop. Get out of there.
Get out of here.
Hands up. 3 minutes.
This on.
Yes, I did, bro.
David didn't switch me.
I hated this leg. I never hated this leg. Just imagine.
Phone down, please.
Photo down.
4 minutes. 4 minutes.
And remember when Colin Kaepernick nailed, America got outraged, but Colin didn't kill nobody.
It's on. That's right.
How many do you need?
Five minutes.
It's on. Man.
That's what it seemed like. Yeah, man. Trying to think about that.
Six minutes.
Get down here for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Like you said, it's not me.
You had to make up your mind. You was going to stay there until it was so cold.
Down.
7 minutes.
Exactly. Gotta get paid.
Down.
Hey, can y'all please get down? We really can't get down.
Hey, but the problem now is but I got 2 people to live on for it.
8 minutes. 8 minutes.
8 minutes.
Red jacket. Red jacket down. Black jacket down. And I'm
He's down.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
No justice.
No peace.
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 That gave you an idea of how long Chauvin had George Floyd down. It had to be intentional. That's the case we make with that taking of the knee. The family goes in this court seeking justice for all of us in America. Let us pause in a minute of prayer as we prepare to lead the family inside for these deliberations. Let us pray in silence.
Amen.
Amen.
And Reverend Al, it is appropriate to acknowledge that this was intentional. I mean, just think about how intentional we had to be to stay down there for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And just how it is intentional for people to do evil, it is intentional for people to do good. And so we want to thank the activists, the leaders, and the city leadership, Mayor Fry, Council President Bender, Vice President Jenkins, Councilman Ellison, and others who were intentional in trying to right this wrong. Because George Floyd life matters, Black Lives Matter, and justice matters. So let's be intentional in achieving justice today.
Do you trust the system, sir?
I'm sorry?
Do you trust the justice system?
Well, right now, this is a referendum if we're going to continue to have two justice systems in America, one for white America and one for Black America. The goal today is equal justice for the United States of America.
Mr. Crump, how confident are you you're going to get the justice you desire in this season today?
Well, I think as his brother Philona said, he is optimistic that we will get justice, full justice. We've gotten civil justice under the 7th Amendment. Now we're looking to the 10th Amendment, state powers. The state of Minnesota has the authority to hold criminals accountable for committing criminal acts. You can't look at that video and say that wasn't a criminal act that killed George Floyd. And so the only question that remains, can black people in America get full justice and not just partial justice?
Is this a tipping point? What happens if justice isn't done?
Yes, sir. How about